Let's get started. Hey, everyone. Welcome to what I think will be an amazing webinar where we're going to try and cover the role of customer success operations as well as possible, especially in a digital and tech touch strategy. I am, by the way, going to reference customer success ops as just CS ops or something like that because it's way too long. So apologies if that's a little bit confusing. It's quite the mouthful. Today, I'm joined by an amazing panel who I will ask to intro themselves in a short minute. But I want to do some really quick housekeeping first. So to already answer some questions, hi in the chat, by the way, to already answer some questions, yes, this is recorded. No need to ask. We will send you the recording, definitely. Also, no need to write down everything that is being said. We also urge you to ask as many questions as possible. I will try to actually get them into the conversation live, if you will, I guess, live. I think that's super fun always. If we don't get to your question or if it doesn't fit the conversation, I will make sure that we at least get back to you afterwards. Yeah, I think that's a deal, right? Those are all of the housekeeping things. Let's start with some intros. Maybe Bora, you can start us off.
Sure. My name is Bora Lee. I am the manager of customer enablement at ChurnZero.
Awesome. Let's just continue, Lane.
Awesome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Lane Holt. I'm a director of customer success and scale here at Gainsight. I'm part of the customer experience team.
Cool. And Sonam, hope I pronounced it right, by the way, didn't ask. Yikes.
Very close, yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Sonam Davulkar. I lead success operations at Gong.
And then finally, Mary.
Hello, everyone. Mary Poppin, Chief Customer Officer at Glint, part of the LinkedIn family. And I'm responsible for all of the post-sale customer experience.
Awesome. Thank you all for being here. I am super psyched. I think when I announced this panel on LinkedIn at some point, I called you guys wizards. I truly also believe that you guys are, especially in the area of ops. I've heard you speak about it before, and you definitely had me confused back then. So really scientific stuff. My name is Remco. I'm from Inside It. I also want to thank Enough Said very briefly because they helped us promote this webinar, which is awesome. And then I suggest we just get going because we have so much to cover and so little time. There's 4 sections I actually want to cover, and that is quite a lot. So I will try and keep it topical. Unless you guys are onto something really cool, then I will just let it run. And I want to start with definitions, and not definitions in the sense of what is customer success ops or something, because I think there's a lot to be found about that online. But maybe you guys can describe how customer success ops is actually set up at your respective companies. What does it own? What do you own? And also how big the team is. And maybe we can do that the other way around now. So let's start with Mary.
Great. So I think just for context setting, which might be helpful, when I think about CS operations at Glint, they focus really on providing foundational execution and strategic insights that are needed to operationalize and scale the CS function. So what exactly does that mean? It's a lot. It's program management, it's systems administration and implementation, process creation and improvement, metrics tracking, reporting and analytics, headcount, budget planning and tracking, and then strategy development in partnership with CS leadership. And then, of course, enablement, right, of all of it. So we have a small but mighty army of 4 who focus on all of these things. And the CS Ops team is part of the CS function.
Awesome. Thank you. Maybe Lane?
Awesome. So here at Gainsight, our CS Ops and our Scales teams are together under our SVP of Customer Experience. So that includes our Gainsight administrators, our teams doing enablement, our teams helping build that strategy, as Mary shared, with the CS leaders across our teams, as well as the Scale team. So the Scale team is also responsible for our digital-led motions across a set of CSMs, as well as our entire customer base. And so that's how we're set up here, as well as making sure that we're enabling our customers and enabling all of our CSMs here at Gainsight.
Awesome. I also like that your digital motion is part of it. It's definitely something to get into in a few. Sonam, maybe?
Yeah, sounds good. So my team reports into our chief customer officer. So we sit within the success organization, which is what we call our post-sales organization, which is comprised of a few different sub-teams: customer success, services, support, solution strategy, education, and community. And so all of these teams kind of comprise our post-sales function and are the internal customers that we support. Our success operations team today, I was the first hire. I joined 2 years ago and have since had the pleasure of building out a team. And I now have a team of 7, including myself and counting. I'm constantly hiring. And I would say that the way that the team is structured today and the purview of our team is very similar to Mary. I think what you had articulated around strategic programs, like process definition and execution, managing the tech stack and our business systems, data and analytics, key metrics, trends, and reporting, as well as some strategic planning. And so the way I've built my team is really to align around like core skill sets that certain folks can bring to that picture, and then be really good at those specific functions.
Awesome. And to be specific, so those 7 people are all in ops, between quotation marks. So
yeah,
all
those
ops
are they're all in operations. Yeah.
Awesome. Super cool. That's quite a big team, I think, or at least I'm seeing some 7 people in the chat. And then finally, Bora.
Yeah, so our customer enablement team sits under our chief customer officer. We are part of the CS function here at TurnZero. Customer enablement for us, it functions very similar to what Mary and Sonam said, which is just being critical, data flow, processes, tech stack, being able to get actionable insight out of that. We are the internal suppliers to our CS team. So under customer enablement, we have operations, we have training, we have community, and we have customer communications. So that is kind of how we blanket kind of customer enablement. All of that has a role and it aligns with a lot of the different teams. So another key kind of role or function of the enablement team is to align our entire company, making sure that we have alignment across different groups, product, marketing, sales, and of course our own CS team, in order to complete our motto or our thought philosophy of customer success everywhere.
Yeah. So when you speak about alignment across different teams, what kind of subjects should we then be thinking about that you're basically working or trying to get alignment about?
I think it's an interesting topic in terms of alignment. A lot of companies talk about being able to break down silos and having open lines of communication. Really, for us, customer success is the most important thing. Every single team should be aligning to that. So how that works at TurnZero is, it might be sales needs something in order to smooth out our handoff process or provide data in a way that is effective. It might mean marketing and product have to work with CS in order to increase adoption or gather resources for certain things, communicate in the right way, an effective way at a specific point in time. I think there's a lot of different bridges that we can build. And, my thought is always as many small bridges and communication lines we can open up, that feedback loop becomes more complete, and that allows us to do more for our customers at the right time, get the value message across to them.
Yeah, I love that, especially the part around breaking down silos. I think especially in SaaS, big topic. So is that something that you feel like that you have to have a proactive push around? So do you feel yourself actually driving the change more often, or do you actually feel like other departments also actually see the opportunity in this alignment and will proactively come to you?
Yeah, for TurnZero, our leadership in each of the silos, each of the departments make an active kind of working relationship. We all drive towards the same thing. It can fall to the wayside very easily if you think about the tunnel that is the day-to-day. So everybody actively works towards that. I think that the CS enablement group allows everybody to have a little bit more accountability, right? Because everything has to function together in order for CS enablement to function properly. And that can be a driving force and a continued motivator for everybody to kind of make sure that that's at the forefront of their mind.
Awesome. Cool. Mary, go.
You're listening to Bora, and just I don't want to take us like off, too far off track or anything, Remco. So pull me in if I go too far.
I'll be watching.
Thinking about breaking down the silos and the foundation really being the customer journey, and getting everybody in the company, all the functions aligned around the customer journey helps with that, the processes, the systems, the communications. But also like CS Ops has such a key role in defining, like helping foster and define the customer journey, but then also helping identify like the trends and the gaps and all kind of those pieces that really is the thread of making sure the journey is consistent and smooth for the customer. So in just sort of bringing it back to CS Ops, and I think what a critical role they play in that, and then leveraging like the foundation of the customer journey, as we maybe focus the rest of our conversation around all of the other things, CS Ops is responsible for. I do feel like that's one key foundational piece that if you get your CS Ops in early, they can really help shape and define that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and maybe that's also a nice bridge. So when I speak and when I hear people speak about CS Ops, I usually get a little bit worried because when you see the sheer list of responsibilities that are often sort of put beneath the CS Ops manager or the CS Ops teams in this case, I actually worry for them because it's so much. I saw this graph by Enough Said. I'll put it in the chat for people that haven't seen it yet. That listed like suggested responsibilities or potential responsibilities of CS Ops people. And while I think they're all super important, it's actually quite a lot, right? It lists anything from team planning to ops planning to execution to strategy, enablement, programs. It's quite a lot. And then you also probably need to work with some other ops people that are there already from marketing or sales or something like that. So, and how did you guys get started with this, and what responsibilities did you focus on first? And then maybe as a secondary question, if we get to it, do you work with other ops teams at your company as well? And then how do you work with them?
Yeah, I can maybe start.
Whoever wants to start?
I can go ahead. So as I mentioned earlier, I was the first CS Ops hire here at Gong. And I do believe that if you are, starting to build out your CS Ops team, the first person you should hire should probably be someone that can actually grow the team and be a manager and, kind of set the foundation for what the ops strategy is and kind of what that internal like ops brand is and how they partner with your success leaders. So essentially what I was able to do over the last few years is hire a team that is very focused on certain competencies. And so I haven't hired a team of generalists because I think that means that, if one person is doing like 10 different things or all the things that are in that chart that you had posted in the chat, then they may not be doing those things well. And so my focus has been hire people that are really good at a certain set of things. And then they all kind of fit into this like ops puzzle piece of like a very well-rounded team where they can be very collaborative with each other and lean on each other for areas that, one person is really strong at and the another person, is strong at something else. And so the way that I've kind of built out the team is having a team that's focused on business systems. So actually building and, implementing core kind of tech stack systems that are, like things that our CSMs use, things that our services team uses, and starting to build like that tech stack vision and maintaining those business systems. The other competency is around program management. So designing key programs that are part of the customer journey and measuring the impact of those programs and iterating on those programs, whether those are customer facing or internal. And the other kind of group is, like strategic planning, metrics. I have someone in business operations that helps us with a lot of the like run the business activities and, building an exec dashboard and doing like monthly business reviews internally with our leaders. And then, looking to like fill gaps around like data and analytics and starting to kind of build this, like ops, this core kind of ops team that can really partner together on key initiatives.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it's similar to Sonam. We've gone through a little bit of a transformation here at Gainsight this year. So for my team, who is running the scale motions here at Gainsight, we started with just me, and we were looking at it as we started talking about the different motions, from digital led to in-app conversations with our customers to really driving that journey. It morphed into building out our CSM team that manages this, to bringing in customer marketing onto my team, from adoption marketing and advocacy, to also including 2 individuals on my team who do the one-to-many operations type things. So one-to-many in-app messages. We have the all email communications to our customers go through my team now. But because we sit within the ops and scale team, we have strong partners in our tech stack for Gainsight and PX, and making sure our data is flowing appropriately to make sure that we can continue to build that out. And so also, as we've gone through this evolution, our ops team has also now started to bring in our professional services ops and our support ops. And so those all live within the operations part of our ops and scale team. But we are every week meeting with marketing operations, product operations, biz ops, to make sure, and rev ops and support ops as well, to make sure that how we're servicing our customers, internal customers and external customers, is all streamlined to make sure that we are benefiting our customers.
Yeah. And what I like about that model is that it actually includes your digital journeys, or at least your digital CS strategy or something. And that's also kind of a nice bridge. I was going to talk about this later, but we can also do it now. So you basically directly contribute to both the high touch and the digital or tech touch, or whatever name you want to give it, side of the business. While at other companies, it's often a shared resource, right? You have a separate ops team, and then you have a scaled customer success team and a high touch customer success team, or something like that. So was this a conscious choice that you guys made, or is this something that just grew?
For me, it was a conscious choice, but for the organization, it was something that we had to come to that conclusion as a group for, because when we were starting, and I know some of those future questions that you're going to ask, so I'm trying not to go too far into them. But as we started building out some of the things that we were doing in the programs, we also started looking at our user journeys, and some of those user journeys were like, this is of course we're going to do this across the board, because impacting one user can improve the health of different customers depending on how many users they have. And so it just made sense for some of the things that we were doing in our scale programs to go across the board. And so as we look at the charter for our scale team, one of the pieces of it is making it easier to be a CSM. And so some of those user journeys that we build are just making it easier for a CSM to be a CSM. And those email communications that we send, sometimes we send on behalf of our CSMs, because they're going to send the same email to everyone anyways, or similar enough that we can just do it at scale. And so thinking about it from that side of what are the things that we're going to do to make it easier for a CSM to be a CSM. And in the long run, that means potentially increasing ratios while still servicing our customers at the same level.
Awesome. Any different takes on how to get started or responsibilities? If not,
I do.
This is it.
Yeah, I do have one. I do have a thought. I think the others are probably going to nod, and for the listeners too. I think a lot of times CS Ops rises really out of necessity. And a lot of times you pull existing resources in to do a lot of the work you need to build the foundation for CS Ops. And so it's either the last team to be formed, or you don't even have any resources at all, or you get to borrow sales ops resources. And my recommendation is make a case today if you don't have CS Ops directly focused on CS. And I know all of us on the call would be happy to help with that, because it's a different part of the business than other functions other leaders are used to. And the ops that are focused in biz ops or sales ops don't fully understand the full world of CS and post-sale. So if you get this dedicated resources, you're going to be able to create so much more scale, so much more efficiency, and really be able to build the foundation you're going to need to continue to grow.
To tag on to kind of what Mary said as well, from our perspective, I think the other thing is if you are kind of just getting a CS ops person out of necessity and you're pulling someone from the team, that skill set is not necessarily the skill set you need, right? It's the same thing as pulling from sales ops or rev ops. The background of CS is great, but that might not be what they need to execute. For example, building a team, like Sonam said, or actually creating the processes, defining it, iterating on it, making that better, having the understanding of a bigger picture, understanding how insights need to be translated to actionable items for different teams within the organization. So I think there's also something to be said in looking for that first individual that fits the role of CS ops versus just finding somebody who is there at the kind of right moment in time to pull out of an existing kind of team. So that might be just another thing to consider as we talk through managing or building an operations team.
Yeah, I think that's a really good addition. Also, saw some questions in the chat. So when do you guys think is actually the right time to start with an ops team? Mm-hmm. Do you do that immediately?
So in my experience, I have always found that it's one of the last things that I put in place. And if given the chance to do it again, I would put it in pretty much right away.
Yeah.
Because once you define your process and the ideal journey, you get the foundation in place, you can scale and grow like crazy. So I would do it early.
And I would double down on that. I would definitely recommend doing it early. I find that at least internally at Gong, ops is thought of as a strategic thought partner and a almost like essential to building out a lot of these key initiatives and programs that we're looking to do for our customers. And so if ops is hired in a more reactive way, then they can't really like be in that role. It's harder to have someone be in that role. But I think if you hire someone in ops from day one, they can really help you make a huge impact from day one, and then also just get ahead of the growing needs and really help kind of grow the team out and start anticipating and being more proactive about how ops can align to the business strategy as it's evolving.
Yeah. The most successful organizations that I've worked with, they have that ops person earlier on. Sometimes it's like half borrowed from sales ops or rev ops, but they quickly then transition into owning that CS ops piece. And so being able to identify that early and making sure that you have it. And I mean, a lot of people looking at the chat, they're like, we're in this boat. It's not early for us. We're trying to define it. And that's not to say you can't do that. I mean, Mary has pointed out that she's successfully done that. But we will, I think I have a resource somewhere for making a case for a CS ops role. So I'm trying to find it real quick and we'll share it in the chat, or Remco, I'll get it to you as well. So just doing your best to make a case for it because of the fact that it underpins all of those pieces. And so thinking about the efficiencies of your team, if they're just doing motions to do motions, it's not really contributing to the success of your customers. And so having that journey written down early is just, it exponentially improves your success.
Yeah.
I'll round out that with a unanimous vote for earlier is better. Anybody who's been, who has followed kind of stuff I post or seen other webinars knows that I'm about process first. I'm about data first. You can't have inputs into a technology or any type of tool that is meant to help you do what you need to do without having that. And what that requires is time investment. People who kind of understand what you're looking to do, what you're looking to achieve. So having, tools in place or, strategies in place to try to drive something without having the foundation, like kind of what Mary said in terms of building that foundation and then being able to accelerate on that is a critical point. And how can you do that without your quarterback, right?
Great. Yeah, no, I think unanimous and also for good reason. What I think is always interesting, especially as you mentioned process and being all about process. So what I often find, especially in SaaS, but also especially in customer success actually, is that process always comes last. And this is super interesting because I think it's not only for the customer success ops role, but it's also for getting certain things in place for your customers. I don't know, onboarding motions, certain tooling, whatever, that will just get you out of the Excel sheets early, basically. Those things always seem to come last in some way or form. I don't know. Maybe it's some curse-ish thing, or we're learning. I don't know, but it's interesting. I also want to quickly, because we have to talk about TechTouch at some point, so let's do it now. So I want to quickly continue on the train of thought that I think Bora started earlier when you mentioned skill sets. And I think actually a digital CSM or a scaled CSM, TechTouch CSM, there's many names, and a customer success ops manager are an interesting pair, because arguably you could say that some of the responsibilities of a scaled or digital CSM, or at least the things that they use and how they do their work, actually overlaps with an ops person. If you look at, for example, setting up campaigns, looking at data, analyzing stuff, using that to personalize certain flows, etc. So how do you guys see these things go and work together? I know some of you have already indicated that it's the same team, actually, so that's an easy answer. But for others, how does that work?
It's an interesting question. Go ahead, Mary. I'll let you take first pass.
Thank you. I was just going to say, I'll jump in. So we created something called the Guided Experience as really our scaled engagement model. It's meant to be like a self-serve, a wow customer journey for our smaller customers who can be successful with more of a very low touch approach. But we also leverage the entire model for all segments of our customers. The teams that support the program are actually 3 teams. So our CSMs, actually 4, sorry, our CSMs, our technical success team, our customer empowerment team, which is responsible for community training and communications, and then our CS Ops team. We have a program manager in our CS Ops team who's ultimately responsible for the overall kind of systems and automation and reporting of the program. And then each of the roles that gets involved throughout the journey, is responsible in those 4 teams. So it's one program, but it's owned really in terms of deliverables across 4 different sub-teams. We apply essentially all the resources and everything created at the very beginning of the journey, regardless of segment of customer. And then, of course, it frees our CSMs up to have more strategic and complex conversations with customers who are, more complex or have multiple products, for example. And so we have found it to be an incredible efficiency lift. We actually grew our book of business 20%, actually more than 20% last year. We didn't add additional headcount to support that business. And we've gotten no drop, in fact, an increase in our NPS and our CSAT for both the segment on strictly Guided Experience and across our customer base. So it's possible to do it. It does take a lot of work and coordination, but it's pretty exciting to see it come to life.
Yeah. It's so digital-led, TechTouch, whatever you want to call it. I tend to call digital-led because I do believe it goes across the customer experience, across all segments. And so it's been a passion of mine for years. And so as we've seen this and how we service it is really making sure that we're providing customers what they need when they need it, as well as providing customers the experience that they need for the size of organization they are. And so a lot of the organizations that we talk to around, being SMB or fast growing accounts are like, we're fast growing. I can't be in meetings all the time. I just need to know what my resources are and how to access them. And so being able to provide them to them and thinking about, as I mentioned earlier, what do they need and when do they need it, and providing it to them in that moment. And so not waiting for the customer to say, hey, I need to figure out how to do this one thing, going ahead and making sure they get that information because of the information, the data that we have about other customers similar to them about when they're going to need it. So thinking about how we apply those models together to their success has been really helpful for both us as we're learning more about our customers as they go through this, as well as our customers.
Awesome.
Yeah, I could talk a bit about how we're kind of building things out at Gong. So at the start of this year, we built out a customer segment within our SMB segment that we're calling Scale. And this is essentially evolving into a more automated, more digital-led customer journey, but we're essentially building parts of the journey as we go. Every quarter, we design something else, whether it's an onboarding process or an automated renewals process, or we just launched like the ability for customers to purchase seats in app. So we call it self-checkout. And so there's little bits and pieces of this customer journey that we are defining as we're going. So I wouldn't say it's fully digital, but the goal of this segment is to really kind of be the test bed for a lot of these automated digital experiences. And then, we test, we iterate, we improve really quickly. And then we can apply some of those concepts or methodologies to the upmarket segments and tailor those appropriately. And so the way that we've kind of built out this team is that we have a whole CSM team. We assign accounts to CSMs, and so those are managed, not unmanaged. But we also have a manager of that team who partners very closely with a operations program manager on my team who is working, spending most of her time kind of designing these flows, designing these journeys, measuring, iterating, and kind of like helping co-create this vision for this team. And so we almost have like a really close like ops and business partnership. And I think that will continue to be essential as we're continuing to kind of like learn what works well for this segment and then start to apply those learnings to the other segments.
And the one thing that I want to pick up on what Sonam said is like they iterate quickly. And so that's the biggest thing is when I'm looking for someone on my team to do is to do something, learn what worked, learn what didn't, change it, and improve the next program. Because if we don't do that, we're going to end up in a spot in 6 months or a year later, or we realize we've impacted our retention rate negatively. And so being able to iterate quickly, be able to make changes, be able to analyze what we've done is a key component and skill set that anyone needs to look for as they're building out that team.
Also, just to build on kind of what everybody else has said, I think it is really about a matter of magnitude. So like digital-led customer success can be applied across everything. What is the magnitude at which, that needs to be provided if we're talking about, what we call traditionally like tech touch customers or self-service customers? What are we talking about if we go upstream, white glove service? The processes and the definitions and the types of things that you do for a digital-led customer success type of program or campaign, all of that is effective. Everybody's using, the base platform. Everybody's using the different types of things. It's just making sure that, again, you get the right information to the right person at the right time and make sure that stuff is value adding so that when it does come to the customer, they're not just saying, okay, I'm getting all of this information and it means nothing to me. It's actually things that are benefiting the customer that they can find value out of. And I think that's the critical component of any type of digital-led campaign is what does it do for the customer at the time that customer receives it? If there's a misalignment there, I think you start to lose the customer, right? And that program cannot be as successful as what you envision it to be.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome bridge again. So I'm actually happy that you guys have all said that digital customer success is not just for an SMB segment or something like that. Still often heard, unfortunately, while valuable for all customers. And that really needs to be driven down the road. I actually don't know how to say that, so let's not try. But I still want to get in segmentation a little bit because, obviously digital customer success is for all customers, but I can imagine, especially from an ops perspective, that you would treat certain segments differently than others, or at least with different priorities or different tools, different notifications. I don't know. So can you guys give a little bit or shed a little bit light on how you actually treat several segments and what's the difference between them?
Yeah, I can jump in. So we have 4 different customer segments at Gong. And I mentioned earlier that, we have pretty close program manager, operations alignment with our Scale segment because that segment is heavily operational and is used as kind of like our test bed for a lot of these flows that we would apply to other segments. The way that we support the other segments is not really like a one-to-one mapping of someone on my team with that segment. A lot of what we're building is very cross-functional. So, for example, this quarter we built out a risk program, and the risk program is internal for our own risk management and escalations process. But we're essentially, some segments have meetings, internal meetings to focus on like risk and flagging risk to our execs, and then other segments don't have meetings. And so the way that we would design a segment or design a program, there's some core kind of commonalities and core like fundamentals, but then the way that we apply the mechanism and the way that we execute those programs could be different based on each segment's needs. And our segments are very different in the sense that our lowest touch segment at the CSMs have hundreds of accounts each. And then our highest touch segment, the CSMs could have like 5 to 10 accounts each. And so naturally, the way that you would try to operationalize some of your strategies would be different for each of those segments. There was a point in time in which a lot of what we designed was more like one size fits all. But now that I have a bigger ops team, and now that all the segments are kind of like, designing their own journeys, we're starting to see a lot of deviation. And so we always try to think about what is common to what we're designing for everyone, and then what are the points at which we would need to deviate and design something custom. And then going back to just like the fundamental challenge in being in an ops role is that there's like no shortage of things to do. And so we always have to prioritize and align with our leadership around, we can't do everything. And so what's the priority? And then as new initiatives come up or new needs come up, having to, deprioritize something or push it to next quarter, we're always kind of actively thinking through those things.
Yeah. So to get really practical about that, so what would, for example, a different ask be between a CSM that handles 200 accounts and a CSM that only has 5?
Yeah, I think a big one is, success planning. So a CSM that handles 5 accounts could have like a very detailed success plan that is like co-created with the customer, where it's almost like a project plan for, hey, how are we getting value out of Gong? And if a CSM that has 200 accounts was creating that for each of their accounts, that would be all that they're doing, right? They wouldn't be able to do anything else. And so we have to find ways to accomplish that goal of success planning in a more efficient way for those lower touch CSMs. And then, potentially there's still things we would operationalize for the higher touch CSMs, but we would do it differently, knowing that they are going to have more kind of direct engagement with their accounts.
Awesome. So you would, for example, then automate part of the success planning for basically.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's super clear. Anyone else with some different insights on this?
I can jump in here just a little bit and kind of play off of the kind of the journey planning and things like that for the different segments. I think it's very, very easy to fall into the trap of creating segments for every kind of group, or start to create journeys or offshoots in so many different ways. I think one of the promising parts of a CS ops team is looking and seeing what makes the most sense. And like someone said, like, what is the commonality that we can use to leverage and get the most efficient outcome for each of our teams, regardless of kind of the teams and the number of accounts that they're working with. So, in terms of that, again, I'm going to go back to kind of, it's a matter of magnitude. So we need to have that commonality, but we also need to understand that if we segment too far, we kind of lose what we're looking to achieve in terms of the outcome and the success point, right? The ROI for a small customer versus a large customer should be the same. Again, it's in magnitude of what we're doing. So I think that's also kind of a critical point when we're talking about how operations fits into journey planning and how the integration of working with, the specific managers of those segments, the specific managers of the different tiers becomes really critical.
Mm-hmm. And with that, like the key customer journey, the key pieces in that are the same. As Bora was saying, you're still trying to get the same ROI for an SMB account as you are for a strategic account. And so it really comes down to when we see a customer journey, it's how do we deliver on that moment? So an EBR for a strategic account, you're going to spend 90 minutes to 2 hours with them in non-COVID times, face-to-face in their office. You usually have a dinner afterwards, something like that. But for an SMB or a fast-growing account, you can't do that. And so you look more at what can I provide them over email, and then maybe have a 30-minute forward-facing meeting about that. So meet for 30 minutes, talking about what we're going to do in the future. So we're still delivering on an EBR. It's just how are we doing that? And so what are those key moments? And then looking at the deliberation piece of it. And Mary, you talked about that a little bit earlier, of like, you have the Glint guided experience across the board. Your strategic accounts get a little bit more though than a Glint guided experience.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think CS Ops, probably one of the most challenging things for them is to be able to kind of segment the setup of the system to deliver the right information at the right time to the right customer. But it creates such an amazing experience internally and externally when you get it right? And part of it is just prioritizing, like, where do you start and then where do you add on based on the bandwidth of your team and things like that. But I would say go for the biggest bang for the buck. So where can 80%, for example, of the activities, be leveraged across your customer base, and then sort of work in the other 20% where as you have time. But I think the metrics are slightly different in driving actions that are taken and who takes that action. And that's really key to define before you put it in the system and in the rules.
Yeah. So can you maybe describe some of the key things that you're then looking at? And also, are they based from an internal perspective? So for example, are you automating internal type sort of activities, like we need to do a QBR or an EBR, we need to do this, we need to do a monthly check-in, we need to do something like that? Or are you also automating based off certain behavior that you see with customers, things that they actually do within the product or don't do within the product? What does that look like? What do you look for?
Yes to all. I think, one concrete example that I can share is our customer experience survey is done across all of our customer base twice a year. And based on the segment and the delivery model, we can look at the trends and insights and determine like the best playbooks and calls to actions from that. But different responses trigger different kind of calls to action. So if we do get a promoter, we do want them to be followed up with still, right? And certain attention given. And that's across segments. It might be a CSM on a high touch, or it might be the manager of like our Glint guided experience, right? Reaching out to our smaller customer base. But I think in just extrapolating that to a lot of the other customer data that you get, product adoption data, referenceability, all of those kinds of things can be set with playbooks and calls to actions to the right role at the right time.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks. One thing that I remember from the session we had to prep this webinar is that we at some point also got into the difference between automating something from the perspective of the account. So basically the company that you're working with, or for example, if Gong's your customer, you're going to be happy, then you're going to be automating for the account that is Gong. That's like the beautiful logo, right? And the actual user that is using the product at some point. So also when looking at segmentation, but for example, also how you actually approach an account or a user, what does that look like? How many layers do you actually have when you go into that?
That's the question of the day, I think, Remco. And so it
was one of you guys that mentioned it. I didn't even think of this.
I think it was me who brought it up, but I'm trying to remember the exact context around it. And so like when we started building our motions here at Gainsight, there are the things, as you mentioned, that have to happen at the company level, but there are certain personas in. So like an EBR is across multiple personas. A renewal is also an event that happens across the company. And then thinking about those different users within it. And so when you think of that customer journey, this is, I think, the point that we were talking about the other day. When you look at the customer journey, there's the moment that the account signs up. and things that will happen throughout that life. But a user can sign up at any point within that customer's life. So you have typically the majority of them will come in mass when the account is created. But then you also don't want to miss the opportunity for someone who's logging in for the first time because they're a new CSM at the organization 6 months into an agreement. And so if you do that, you miss a huge opportunity to drive how they're using the platform at a healthy level, or how they're using your product or your service at a healthy level. And so making sure that we think about those two components. A renewal is going to happen every 12 months, every 24 months, whatever the cadence it is. And so those motions have to happen at the account or the company level. But then the things that are specific to a user have to happen at the right time within their life. So we've talked a lot about the right message, the right time, the right user, and that becomes very important there. But at the company level, there might be things that just have to happen. So like product things that have to happen, and you have to upgrade a product, or you need to make sure that you're aware of a product release. Like those are going to happen across your customer base at the same time for every account. But that user experience is going to differ a little bit. So making sure that you're thinking about what is my user journey and what is my company or customer journey as well.
To play off of that, I think it's really about buy-in. I think the hardest thing with anything is change management, right? So great, you have the account level. That's your leadership. That's your people, your exec sponsors. That's your primary point of contact. Where you really need to drive home ROI and buy-in is at the end user level. That could be that user that signs on for the first time and just has a great experience. That could be somebody who is introduced to a community right away and, has a whole network of people to rely on. Getting that end user experience and getting that end user buy-in through direct communication, through operations, through getting them information in a different way than you would your leadership group, I think is critical. And that is when I think you really create a holistic experience for the organization as a whole. The leadership has already been bought in. They have to do less work. It's not as hard trying to get their team to adopt and to engage in the program or the platform. The end user is like, this is a fantastic experience. I understand it. Things are popping up at the right time. They're engaging with the tool. They know that they have a feedback loop. They now have a community and a training tool behind them to help them to accelerate and be the best version of themselves, right? That lifts the whole organization. And I think that is critical when we think about who are we designing what for. We actually have to design for both of them because they do different things.
Yeah. And would you say both are of equal importance?
I think
basically.
I would say different points at different times, right? When you're coming in, you have to have the leadership buy-in, right? There's nothing moving without that. But guess what? As you get further and further along, right? As you get further and further along, that leadership buy-in means nothing if the change management and the adoption doesn't happen at the end user. I've heard, and probably everybody here has experienced, times when you're like, the leadership is bought in, everybody's happy, all the metrics are there, and then the team itself is like, we're not doing this. We just refuse to make the change. Think about how much harder that makes it, right? For everybody involved. And a lot of the times that can lead to a really negative result, or at least a harder situation to come back from.
Yeah. And then to your point before, though, like the stakeholder comes in and you have exec buy-in at the beginning, but they change. And now you have to identify and drive that exec buy-in again. And so thinking about it there too, is like, you solve for it when you think about the company, the customer, or the company level engagement and experience, but also remembering that you have to have it again and making sure that you're having those plays, you're doing the right thing when an exec comes in. And so now we're getting a little bit back into like the CS strategy as a whole, but it's still those same things. So it's also, one of the things that I've learned from talking to several people, I talked to the Glint team and the Okta team and other teams, and one of the things that they've always told and they've said is create something that you can copy, change the resources, and just put it in again. And so as you're thinking about your programs, build them in a way that you can reuse them. And so build that new user journey in a way that you can use it when another new user shows up. Build that exec buy-in journey in a way that you can repurpose it as when you get another exec, because you're going to get them. That's part of how it rolls within the tech organizations.
Awesome.
And I think Just
no,
one-
go.
One add-on too that I have is, as we're thinking about the different contacts and different users, as you capture survey data or as your CSMs are having conversations, I think looking at the insights and trends across not just segments, but the roles within your customer organizations, because, as Bora and Lane just mentioned, the exec sponsor can be super, super happy, but the project team, not so much. It's eventually going to bubble up. So you don't want to be surprised with, great health, and then they don't renew, right? So really digging in there and being able to take action across the roles as well as segments is super critical.
Yeah, I agree. Awesome. Thanks for that final addition. I think that makes a lot of sense. Looking at the time, we have 10 minutes left. So I kind of want to jump into the final part of the 4 segments that I wanted to cover. And that is tooling. So we've received a lot of questions. One was from Manuel, and I think a few more people asking, what does your tech stack look like? What are the most important tools to be able to do your job as a CS ops? Who wants to go first?
I feel like you're going to have to call on someone. Oh, there you go.
Fine, Lane, you're up.
I mean, I think it's kind of hopefully a little bit obvious in where I'm at, but having Gainsight CS and Gainsight PX are pivotal pieces to us being able to do our jobs here for a CS ops and a scale team. I think if we kind of think about what we're trying to solve for, it's also the data flow. So making sure that we have the right data about our customers. So thinking about, do you have a survey tool? Do you have product usage data? For us here, we solve those with our Gainsight tools to be able to accomplish them.
To add on to that, I kind of think about our tool. We're a CS platform, so that's the hub. I've worked at a lot of different places, but I think that hub is critical, right? So where is the information coming in? Like Lane mentioned, where's my surveys data coming from? For us, that's also within our platform. But again, how do I link to a BI tool? Where is that data coming from about the sales information? Then where is the finance data going? Do we have everything linked in one place, or we're opening up 10 things? So in my opinion, think about the hub. What is it critical that you need? Everybody needs data. Everybody probably wants to have usage data, right? What is your customer actually doing in your tool so that you can action and digitize based off of that? Are they paying you, right? Are they a customer that is actually in good standing with you all so that you can provide all of the things that you want? I think those are some very critical foundational tools that help to align kind of everybody across the board.
Yeah, I can jump in and talk a bit about our tech stack. So, I think for us, we're really building kind of the foundational pieces of a tech stack to really help us scale. So, for example, we launched our community 2 months ago, and we also have built a robust kind of LMS system for our Gong Academy. We try to use our product as much as possible, and so we have a ton of data in Gong around just key customer meetings, key engagements. Are we talking to the right personas? When was the last time you talked to an exec sponsor? And so bringing that data into a place where the people that need access to that data and need to take actions or, start a workflow based on that data is really important for us. And part of that is also our account teams are growing bigger, right? There was a point in time, 2 years ago where we just had CSMs working on accounts. And now we've built out this whole robust success organization with a training team and, services teams. And, some of our strategic customers get a few different folks assigned to them on their account team. And so what we're trying to do is figure out, for these specific roles, do we have, the tool that they need in order to perform their jobs? And if we don't, what is that gap? And should we invest in current tooling? Should we explore new tooling? And then we're starting to kind of build those foundational building blocks to really create a robust tech stack for a very fast growing success org. And I do think, part of what we try to do also is just use our own product as much as possible and push the limits of that. And so a lot of what we're doing within operations is trying to be really innovative around actually like, how can we use Gong better? How can we create these new use cases internally and be our own kind of like test bed for like, how do we use Gong, in different ways?
Awesome. Maybe Mary to round it out.
Yeah. So I actually, hopefully, I've sort of categorized definitely a CSM system, right? A specific CS system, not repurposing Salesforce or Dynamics or anything else, right? You need your own customer success like system. Product utilization, if you can get it internally, great, but why not leverage, what's out there? Support and ticketing, gotta have that so you can really dig into the trends and integrate it into your CSM or other system. Community is so awesome for scale and bringing your customers together and driving engagement. I can't say enough about it. And I am going to make a plug for Insighted. Remco didn't ask me to, but we love it. And external training, LMS, super also critical for scale and getting the resources into your customers' hands easily. And then I'm going to add one, which is a reporting analytics or AI platform. So there's a company, Involve AI, that's doing some customer intelligence work with AI, and integrating that with the rest of your stack is going to give you like this amazing personalized, specific customer action view that we just don't have today. So centralize your data, run your customer health and all that great stuff, and then stack on these amazing systems that will give you lift, give your customers, better experience, and empower your customers really, and your internal teams.
Yeah. I also love the final shout out to centralizing your data. To be honest, easier said than done, I think, at least when I speak to other CSMs or CS orgs or CS leads for that matter. They usually say, okay, yeah, I need some data from product to actually see what they're doing with our product, but that's locked up somewhere. Only the PM has a login, I don't. So I only get to see the data whenever he's around in the office or remote or accepting my Zoom calls. And then you have marketing, who we're using for some of the email stuff that we're doing, and we need some of that data back, but don't actually have a login to HubSpot or the right roles or rights or you. So how do you navigate that internally?
Lots of bridges being built across organizations. To our point earlier, CS ops organizations are typically the ones meeting with all the other ops organizations within their business, because of the fact that marketing wants to know what we're doing and product ops wants to know what we're doing. And so it's almost like you become like that moderator of your organization to be able to say, did you know that this other person is trying to do the thing that you're solving? And so similar to what we talked about in the past, I think I give the analogy of a pizza, like everyone's trying to take it, like try to eat around the crust, but no one wants to take the whole slice. And CS Ops comes in and says, here's everyone's slice. You eat that one and you eat that one. And they become more of that director of and conductor of those different conversations.
Yeah. So is this also actually why you should just have CS Ops in the first place? Because you need someone to actually own like that full 360-degree overview of this is who our customer is, this is what they're doing, this is how successful they are or not successful in the worst case. These are all of the touch points we've had with them in the past 6 months, and this is what we should be doing now. Shouldn't that just be customer success ops?
Mm-hmm. I think that's a big part of it. Yeah. And I think part of Lane, what you said, bridge building, I think a lot of that happens of just like connecting to the other ops teams, understanding what are your shared priorities, how do those align to company priorities, and then also like what are the joint initiatives where not even things that other people are asking for, but things that we need to be proactive about and plan for and advocate for. Like for us within ops at Gong, we are kind of the internal advocates across a number of dimensions for the success org, but also for our customers, right? And so we're trying to think 10 steps ahead of like, okay, what do our CSMs need? What do our other team members need? And be, very proactive about like building those bridges and making those asks as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was gonna mic drop after the last thing that I just said, but we have 2 minutes. We have 2 minutes still, so I can't. So that gives us time to do one more thing. So one of the questions I often get is, okay, so when is an ops person actually successful? So maybe you guys can have some insight or give some insight on how do you actually grade the people in your team? What OKRs do they have, or personal goals or something like that? What's important there?
It's an interesting question. And when you have a newer team or you're trying to build one, I think the success is actually being able to say why you missed something. So, because we're not going to hit a home run every time, but if you don't know why you didn't hit that home run, you're not successful. And so being able to understand and do the analysis and being able to say yes or no, I was successful and why, and how I'm going to change it in the future. Other metrics, after you get past that point, you're starting to look at how are we influencing those lagging outcomes across the organization.
And I think just to add to what Lane said is just be realistic. We want CS Ops to do so much, like we talked about throughout the entire talk today. And I think really prioritize and be realistic and set the right expectations.
Cool. Any final words?
Go CS Ops.
I think, Remco, like echoing what was in the chat, I think we need another one. There's so much more to cover in this. And
Agreed. Well, I wouldn't mind. So definitely up for making that happen in the future. For now, unfortunately, time is up. So I want to thank you guys for actually being here, making the time to speak to me and to speak to our audience here. Also want to thank the audience for the awesome engagement in the chat. A lot of good questions. There's also some questions we didn't answer. So like I said, I will definitely try and get back to you in some way or form. I'll have a think about how to actually do that. So thanks. And hope to see you at the next CS Ops webinar that we're obviously planning. Thank you, guys.